Hey everyone, I'm Mary Beth McAndrews from Dread Central, and I am here today with Roxanne Benjamin, director of the upcoming film There's Something Wrong with the Children. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm good.
Very
Happy to
excited.
be here.
Yay! Very excited to chat about this movie. But my first question for you is, what attracted you to this script?
I get sent a lot of scripts about motherhood, I guess just because I'm a woman, and most of them are about like pregnancy or having like either being pregnant or like something with like an infant in it. And I don't really know much about that. So I'm always been a big fan of like kind of evil kid movies. So when this came to me and it was kind of a more nuanced approach to like the idea of motherhood. Um, it really was like an interesting, I think, opportunity to kind of take that script and see what I could do with it in terms of making a movie that was about the interplay of like the friendships between people who have kids and people who don't. And once you get to a certain age, when you're expected, like everyone, it's almost like joining a cult. They're like, when are you gonna have kids? When are you gonna have kids? Are you guys gonna have kids? When are you gonna have kids? Because they want you to join them. So that's like a pressure I feel like a lot of us get in our 30s that I don't feel is explored as much in horror. So it was something that I really wanted to see what I could do with once I saw kind of like the script and that it was headed in that direction. So that was something I was really excited about.
And that's so I love this movie because of that. So like I just got married and everyone continues to ask, when are you going to have kids? And I don't want kids, and it's just like the eternal conversation. And I love you don't have those like see those discussions as much in horror, especially.
Hmm.
So it was super refreshing to have a movie that is like inverts a lot of that, because you also have like the crazy woman character actually be a guy, which I was also
Yeah.
super excited about. Like this isn't the typical crazy lady horror film, which I was really into as well.
Yeah, and I didn't want to make it something where it's like, oh, he's an unreliable protagonist in some way until the movie
Yeah.
flips because of some sort of like mental problem or whatever. But then at the
Yeah.
same time, there's so much of that that's a stigma against women that I did want to like have a hint of it that it's like, no, it doesn't matter what if you have any sort of like issue or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that what you're saying isn't true, you
Yeah.
know? So
Exactly.
having that flip to like all of those tropes being like almost like a see how you like it kind of thing was also really, really fun. And it was also kind of as a director too, a fun experiment and how you change the perspective of the film throughout because you're with one character for a big chunk and then it
Yes.
switches to someone else. So that was like a how do you keep both of them empathetic and when this person hasn't really been our like point of view character throughout the whole movie. So that was like an interesting challenge in terms of like how to block the scenes and how to shoot the scenes too. That was kind of like I feel like there was a lot more going on in this script than a lot of the stuff that I read. So it was definitely a big draw.
Yeah. Well, and also I think this movie is really has a lot to say about relationships and intimacy too, because you have like the couple talking about being in a foursome and kind of like opening up the like and that kind of intimacy. And I again like I feel like this is a more nuanced look at parenthood and young parents and just like being a younger person in a relationship and what that looks like. And I was really excited about that because we don't again, it's just more complicated than a lot of relationships we see in horror, which I think is awesome.
There was
But my
also oh
I'm
sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say there was also something to Amanda and Alicia's relationship too that I feel like threads throughout the film that was interesting to me in terms of, you know, Alicia's character is very upset by kind of like what these children have done to her in a way and how they've changed her friend and how they've changed her friendship and how they've kind of turned her into something that she doesn't recognize in a way. So I thought that was a kind of an interesting thing to try to play with in her motivations and like the back half of the movie too.
Hell yeah. And so what was it like directing these two children? Because I mean, they're really good, creepy children. And I'm just curious what that
Mhm.
experience was like getting those performances out of them.
That part was easy, honestly.
Oh,
Like it
sweet.
was just like they just flipped on a switch and we're like, here you go. And then both of their parents were just like, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know. I feel so bad. And I was like, no, this is perfect. This is great. And they were, they were super pro when as soon as like you would cut, they were just like back to like, okay. So it was really it was really fun to watch them kind of flip on the evil switch in a way. And kind of the big direction I gave them was like, you're messing with like your little brother or your little sister, which is like if you have a sibling, that dynamic and that like hiding something from the people who like could yell at you for it, but like really driving that other person crazy. I feel like is inherent in most sibling relationships in
Uh-huh.
their back and forth. So that I feel like they got right away.
That's incredible. And they weren't actually siblings in real life, were they?
No,
Okay.
uh-uh.
So, okay, you talked about liking kind of creepy kid horror. So, what is perhaps one of your favorite creepy, scary, kids are awful kind of movie?
I was a big fan of Goodnight Mommy, the original when that
Yeah.
came out. Uh, that really got me because it showed a lot of like almost inadvertent creepiness. Like you could follow their like thought path and how they got to what they did. And that to me was like more scary than anything. And then The Good Son is another one that's like, yeah, kind of like burned into my brain as a kid.
Same. The Good Son,
Mhm.
like I still am scared of overpasses because of The Good Son.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, like, when you were directing this movie, did you think about any of those, like, those films while you were directing? Not in terms of influences, but just kind of thinking about how to craft like a scary child movie, or were you trying to kind of just create your own thing outside of that?
Not really. It's funny. It's like I feel like, I watch so many horror movies. You just kind of absorb the language as you go. And I read
Yeah,
so much horror too. And like I'm
yeah,
just kind of surrounded and embedded in it. And when I'm doing like scenes, I don't really think about it in those terms. I think about it in terms of
yeah.
like the character and the character's perspective and whose perspective we're in. And then how do you shoot it from a certain perspective to like increase our anxiety for that character. So it's like a really just kind of moment by moment, shot by shot, scene by scene thing that you hope
Yeah.
by the end adds up to one thing.
Hell yeah. And then my final question for you is, what is there a particular scene that you were incredibly like excited slash impressed that you were able to pull it off?
Uh I think the scene with Zach and Alicia when he kind of turns on her in the middle and she fights him in the house. That was one that was a real challenge. That was a real challenge.
Oh, really?
Because
What
there's
was
like
like challenging?
you've got special effects, you've got heavy lifting going on. There's the fact that we had to tent the house because it's broad daylight when we were shooting it, because
Oh,
the kid
okay.
hours, because the kids, are also like right before then that we were shooting at the same time. That there's blood and special effects, and there's a room that's completely destroyed and a room that isn't, and all that has to be done at the same time. So it's like you have to do all of those things. And
Ah,
it's like the pre, bloody, the post bloody. It's always the continuity of all of this stuff and trying to get all of your angles and knowing that you have to do the cleanup in between. Anytime that there's like heavy amounts of blood, which there are quite a few in this movie, for how like kind of you don't really see that much, but there's still some gore, but you don't see a ton of gore, but like it's still a very bloody movie for all of that throughout. So whenever you're dealing with that, it's always, just the kind of like Tetris and logistics of like cleanup and then doing different angles and everything and getting everything to look right. So that's always challenging.
awesome. Well, Roxanne, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today about There's Something Wrong with the Children.
Thank you. This has been great.